Hello, my name's Zila, I'm a transgender man, and going to the gym is a pretty big part of my life. And on the 23rd of October 2023, I got top surgery, or the name for the operation that I got was a double mastectomy. Now this meant I had to take 6 weeks off of the gym and off of any exercise whatsoever. And in that time, I lost a lot of weight and a lot of strength. So I wanted to do a video on what I did following that 6-week recovery period to get my physique back to where it was prior to top surgery, and actually surpassing where my physique was prior to top surgery. So I want to take you through the week after recovery period, the month after recovery period, what my gym split looked like, and kind of just what I was doing to ease my body back into it and make results. Now, I really should point out before I get into this video that this might come as a surprise, but I am not a surgeon. I have zero medical experience. Everything I talk about in this video is based on my own experience and what medical professionals told me for my individual case. Always listen to your surgeon before you listen to any other idiot like me on the internet. So let's get into the video, but before we do that, if I could remind you to please like and subscribe, as this is a growing channel, that will do a lot to help me out. Thank you. So this video will be split into 3 parts. Firstly, my first session back after recovery, and also what my initial program looked like in that first week. The second part of the video will talk about how that program progressed over time, and essentially how I adapted it to me being able to do stuff again, like when I eventually started doing chest movements again or overhead movements, and how long it took for me to get to those stages. Lastly, I'll cover the topic that a lot of people want to know about when they talk to me about post-surgery recovery, and that's how long it took for me to get my strength back, and also how long it took for me to surpass where I was prior to surgery. Now, I got top surgery when I was 5 months on testosterone, which was pretty frustrating because I worked out for 3 years prior to starting testosterone. So starting T meant that I was experiencing UV gains all over again. And around 3 to 4 months on testosterone is when the fun started to happen. My strength started skyrocketing. I was looking and feeling amazing. And then I had to get my titties chopped off and take 6 weeks off of the gym. And in that time period, I lost quite a bit of weight. I lost 4 to 5 kilograms. Now you might be thinking, bro, you got stuff taken away. That's got to count, right? Not as much as you would think. Left titty, 484 grams. Right titty, 496 grams. So in total, just under a kilogram. And everything else was water, fat, and muscle. And in those 6 weeks, I could feel the strength leaving my body. And don't get me wrong, it was 100% worth it. Top surgery is single-handedly one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. And the summer just gone, summer 2024, my first topless summer, was everything I could have imagined and more. It was amazing. I finally feel at home with my body. It doesn't mean though that at the time, it didn't have a mental effect. It's hard to watch your hard work start to diminish. And therefore, on the 8th of December 2023, when my surgeon cleared me for exercise, I packed my bag and I got straight down to the gym. And that's when my post-surgery comeback journey began. Now, let's talk about that first session back after top surgery. I have notes here because I have a terrible memory. So exactly 6 weeks after top surgery, my surgeon and I had a call. He spoke to me about how I was doing and he cleared me for exercise. So I packed my bag, put on my gym kit, and got on my way. Now, prior to going to the gym that day, because I had so much to do in those 6 weeks, I sculpted a plan for when I got back into the gym. And what that looks like was I was going to do everything except, of course, my chest. I knew I wouldn't be able to go to the gym as much as I did prior to top surgery, which was 6 days a week. So I planned to try and do 4 days a week. And I drafted up a 2-day split, which essentially I would just put on rotation. So what that looked like was day 1 was quads and pull. And by pull, I just mean back and biceps. And day 2 was posterior chain of the legs. So by that I mean like glutes, hamstring, calves, and push without the chest. So shoulders and triceps. Now, my first session back, I was doing day 1, which was quads and pull. I started off with some leg press, which seemed to go okay. Obviously the weight was dropped, but I was moving, I was having no discomfort, everything was good. I then moved on to easy bar bicep curls, which I was very excited to get back into. I felt like my arms really shrunk during recovery, so was very excited. No qualms there. Again, the weight was dropped a lot, but I felt good. Then I moved on to my third planned exercise, which was single arm dumbbell rows, which is a back movement. Now, I remember as I was pulling with my right arm, if I remember correctly, I felt this really uncomfortable twinge in my chest. So I dropped the weight immediately. And when I say dropped, I don't mean I lowered the weight. I mean, I physically dropped the weight on the floor and decided that I was not ready to do that movement, clearly. In fact, it made me rule out back altogether for that first week, which led me to create a new plan, which essentially became my week 1 to I think about week 2 plan, which was day A, quads and biceps, which included easy bar curls, leg press, hip abductors, leg extensions, alternating bicep curls or hammer curls, and then forearms. Don't ask me why, I was going through a phase, but I started working out my forearms. I think it's because during recovery, all I could do was get one of those like ball things that you could squeeze, and that was the most amount of exercise I was allowed to do. So I got into my forearms at the time. Day B ended up being posterior chain, so glutes, hamstrings, or calves, or rather hamstrings and calves, because I've always had a little bit of a dump truck, if I do say so myself, so I don't really target my glutes, and triceps. I also decided to kind of leave shoulders out after my little experience with the back exercise and just focus on arms and legs. And day B looks like tricep push downs or pull downs, and by that I just mean either the straight bar for push downs or the rope for pull downs. Didn't matter, just depended on what I felt like doing. Then leg curls, tricep kickbacks, ab movements, and calves. Now you'll see on my plan that I did 3 sets of everything and I didn't put any rep ranges in. Now, I'm usually all about planning in the gym. I think plans are important, it helps to progress over time, but this was a period in my life where I needed flexibility. I did this to manage expectations and also to make sure I was listening to my body and what felt right. Now, you've probably heard of intuitive eating. I was kind of doing intuitive gains, and I found that it kind of worked for me, just doing 3 sets of everything, probably usually working in a rep range of 8 to 12, but for some things that would be lower, for some things that would be higher, and that was that. So now moving on to that progressing and adapting period and how I changed my plan over the coming weeks to kind of accommodate for how things started to change, how my body was able to do things again. So around 7 to 10 days back in, I started phasing in back and shoulder exercises. I wasn't doing anything that required me to reach above the head, so no overhead presses for shoulders, which I don't really do anyway because I think that you can hit those fine doing chest presses, but that's a whole other video for a whole other time. And no lateral pull downs for back, or definitely no pull-ups. So instead what that looks like was lateral raises for shoulders, obviously keeping in mind that I didn't want to go too high up, just working in the range that I felt comfortable in, and rowing movements for the back because again, I felt comfortable in that position as opposed to that position. And then 2 weeks in was the big one, and that's when I started working out my chest again. Now, that might sound a little bit soon. I did talk to my surgeon and nurses about this, and the answers they could only really give me throughout the entire process when it came to when can I work out my chest, or even what can I do when I get back into the gym, was just take it slow. Now, that first session back to benching, I had lost a lot of strength and also a lot of mobility, so I think I was benching the bar.
The bar feels heavy. It's never good.
and then I went up to 30 kilograms, so 5 kilograms on each side in that session, and I realized that that was enough for me. But 7 days later, I was benching 50 kilograms. So that's a pretty sharp progression, right? And you could argue, was that a little bit soon? Is that the reason why my scars are a little bit keloided? Maybe. I'd more likely put that down to genetics. My mum has keloid scars. She's also Indian, which makes me mixed race, and people of color are 15 times more likely to have keloid scars. That's probably more likely the reason. But yeah, maybe the appearance of my scars could have benefited from more rest. However, it's all about what's important to you. For me, as long as I wasn't putting myself at risk, I was happy to proceed, because getting back into the gym and exercising was something that was very important to me. Now, after hitting chest again, from this point on, all body parts were now incorporated back into my routine, but I kind of kept up the day A quads and pull, day B posterior and push split for a little bit of time, and slowly started to gym more. So instead of doing 4 days a week, I started doing 5 and 6 and just kept rotating that split until I got to around the end of January 2024, where I made an entirely new split, which looked very similar to my split before surgery. And this was getting back into the push-pull legs routine, or rather push legs pull. That's just how I prefer to do it and how I still do it to this day. And this had rep ranges included. So again, I was getting back into the swing of things. I was having a stricter routine, and I was also finding it a lot easier to track and progress. Now feel free to screenshot these. For reference, SS means superset, which essentially just means I was doing 2 exercises back to back with no rest. And extra just means if I had a little bit of extra time that day, I would do that exercise. And from this point on, it was kind of back to normality. The only thing that I hadn't really done yet, although it is included in that routine, was pull-ups. I don't know when I added those back in, but I think it wasn't until maybe 3 months after top surgery, maybe even slightly longer than that, I was able to do pull-ups again. Now this wasn't a strength issue. I was doing lat pull downs, I was absolutely fine. It was simply just a comfort thing. Imagine this, right? After top surgery, you almost feel like your skin has been stapled together, like everything's very tight. Your skin isn't that flexible yet. So going like this was not the most comfortable thing in the world. So that was the last thing I got back to doing. And once I was able to do pull-ups again, everything felt pretty normal. Now, the fun topic. How long did it take for me to get my strength back? So I'll start with legs and arms. So my legs didn't actually deteriorate that much. I think it's because I was doing so many steps, not that steps are equivalent to working out your quads, but after like a week post top surgery, I started doing like 10,000 steps a day. Honestly, like this wasn't as like some kind of exercising punishment. It was just because being in the house for that long was driving me insane. So my legs within a couple of weeks were back to where they were before. I was leg pressing 200 kilos just fine for around 15 reps. Now my arms were the thing that I noticed deteriorated the most during top surgery. And I think this was a big lesson for me in just how effective muscle memory is. Because within 2 to 3 weeks, my arms had bounced back. And honestly, this was crazy to me. And something that really helped me solidify that I'd got my strength back is because I'd always tracked my weights beforehand. So I knew, oh shit, like I'm curling an easy bar with 20 kilos on each side, or maybe it was 15 kilos on each side at that time. I'm back to where I was before surgery. Sick. So that was pretty cool, and I could also see it in my t-shirts. And remember, when you don't work out for ages and your arms start to shrink, it's not necessarily all muscle loss. A lot of it is glycogen stores and water and all sorts of stuff that make your arms look smaller than they actually are. Now moving on to chest, and I'll include shoulders with these just because they're so connected that it's hard to talk about one without the other. Chest was obviously the thing that took the longest to bring back, but I actually shocked myself in how quickly I was able to get that bench press back. And I'll use bench press as like the standard record of how strong I was for my chest, just because that's what I was doing post-surgery. So prior to top surgery, my max bench press PR was 77.5 kilograms for one. I really wanted an 80 kilo bench press prior to surgery, but my date ended up being brought forward and c'est la vie. So 77.5 kilograms for one. Now on the 12th of February 2024, so 4 months post-op, 10 weeks back into working out, or 8 weeks back into working out my chest, I got that 80 kilogram bench press. So I surpassed my pre-surgery bench press record. From then on, the only way was up, and by summer, I got my 2-plate bench press, i.e. my 100 kilo bench press. So that's when I would say everything was basically back to normal for me. That was 4 months post-op. Like I mentioned previously, I still struggled a little bit with pull-ups. Those eventually came back. I can't give you a date for those. So around 4 months or 10 weeks back into the gym is when everything was pretty plain sailing. And I haven't spoken about this yet, but bear in mind, during this period, scar care was so important. And what I did for my scar care was I used a silicone gel that my surgeon recommended, and I was essentially rubbing that on the nips and the scars twice a day for around 5 to 10 minutes. And that was pretty much that. And to this day, my scars are pretty good. In fact, bit weird to sit at my kitchen table shirtless talking to a camera, but just to give you an idea of what I look like, unpumped, just in natural lighting, this is essentially it. I am very proud of the way that my chest has come out. I found that post-surgery, and I didn't mind this by the way, but post-surgery I did feel like a prepubescent boy. Everything was flat, there was no definition there. It kind of felt like I was going through my own little puberty or teen years. So I really didn't mind it. It was actually quite cute. But I knew over time I wanted that more masculine shape, and I'm still growing that now. I'm by no means at the end of my gym journey. I'm not even close. In 2 months' time, I come up to 2 years on testosterone, and honestly, I'm so happy with how far my journey has gone. I'd love to try and answer some of the questions that you guys might have, and I hope that my experience was somewhat helpful to you. Hold on, let me put my shirt on for this. But please remember, everyone is different. Surgery is a tough time, and you need to just take the time to recover and listen to your body. And remember, it's always worth it in the end. The reason that trans people get surgery is to fundamentally better their lives. So take it easy. If you're going through surgery recovery right now, rest up. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer in the comments. Thank you for watching.